Hello everyone. I'm so sorry that I'm posting this very late. Now we will look into the 6th January newspaper articles. See, in this foul year, National Green Tribunal notice to center on plea over newborns' ill health. You can use this as an example in your mains answer. See, the next article is in a first government to raise funds from market for infrastructure projects. See, this is the first time that Delhi government has signed a MOU with the RBI just for raising funds from the open market. See, when you read news like this, indoor 38 new diarrhea cases, 7 deaths so far. Don't read it only as a health issue. For ethics paper, this is pure case study material. Because UPSC never asks like what happened. They ask what should an administrator do when this happens. Now think of the situation. People are dying due to diarrhea, which is a completely preventable disease. That itself raises ethical red flags here. So first ethical issue is failure of public health systems. Clean drinking water, sanitation, waste management, all are basic duties of the state. If people die due to contaminated water, it is not just misfortune, it is an administrative failure. Second issue, accountability of local administration and municipal bodies. Who is responsible for water pipelines, leakages, mixing of sewage with drinking water, delayed response after first few cases? So this becomes a question of institutional responsibility, not just a medical response. Third issue, which is very important for ethics, speed versus procedure dilemma. As a district collector or municipal commissioner, you face a choice: follow normal tender procedures and protocols, or take emergency actions like shutting water supply, arranging tankers, mass chlorination, temporary camps. So the ethical principle here are public interest over procedural rigidity. So UPSC loves this conflict. When rules delay relief, ethical governance demands flexible action. Now the fourth issue, information and transparency. Do you downplay numbers to avoid panic or give full facts and risk public fear? So ethical balance needed between transparency and preventing panic. So this becomes a classic truth versus social stability dilemma. Now the fifth angle, care for vulnerable sections. Diarrhea deaths mostly affect children, elderly, slum populations. So questions of social justice, equity, prioritizing vulnerable groups. An ethical administrator must not give equal treatment but equitable treatment. Now, the sixth angle, media pressure and political pressure. When deaths happen, media wants headlines. Politicians want damage control. But the administrator's ethical duty is not image management, but life protection and root cause fixing. So, values tested here are integrity, courage, and professional neutrality. Now, see how UPSC can convert this into a case study. They won't say indoor diarrhea, they'll say in a city, sudden outbreak of waterborne disease has caused multiple deaths. There are allegations of contaminated water supply and negligence of civic authorities. Then they will ask, what are the ethical issues involved? What immediate steps will you take? How will you ensure accountability? How will you prevent recurrence? So whenever you see like deaths due to diarrhea or a disease, hospital negligence, food poisoning, building collapse, fire accidents, train your mind to think this is ethics paper material, not just general studies 2 or 3. Finally, the biggest ethical learning from this incident is public service is not only about policies and files, it is about preventing avoidable human suffering. And when suffering is preventable, inaction becomes an ethical failure. Hope this is clear. In the next article for the day, the parallel track that keeps US India ties going. See, it is a very important concept in India US relations that even when political relations look tense, institutional cooperation continues strongly. And this is very useful for general studies too, and also for essay on foreign policy and strategic partnerships. See, in 2025, we saw clear political strains between India and the United States. The Quad Leaders Summit, which India was supposed to host, got postponed. And there was no clear communication from officials about when it will happen. At the same time, trade relations also became difficult. The US imposed tariffs on Indian goods. India's exports to the US dropped sharply in 2025. There were also geopolitical concerns. The US showed warming ties with Pakistan. There were perceptions of a possible US China understanding, sometimes called a G2 type approach. And the US linked tariffs to India's purchase of Russian crude oil. The interesting part is China and Pakistan were facing lower tariffs. Pakistan even offered port access and critical mineral supplies to US companies. So, politically and economically, relations were clearly under stress with India. But this is the key point here: institutional cooperation did not slow down. See, when you look at the Quad cooperation, even though the leaders' summit was postponed, the Quad continued working at the ministerial and working group level. New initiatives were taken in maritime security, countering transnational threats, economic cooperation, critical technologies, and humanitarian assistance. The Quad Counter-Terrorism Working Group also met for the third time in December. So, on the whole, what does this show? Even if top political meetings are delayed, operational cooperation continues. So, the strongest pillar, if you take the India US relations, is defense cooperation. Since the 2008 civil nuclear deal, defense ties have been expanding steadily. In October 2025, a new 10-year defense framework agreement was signed, and it was signed by US Secretary and India's defense minister. And this agreement focuses on joint coordination, information sharing, technological collaboration, regional stability, and deterrence. And military exercise also continues regularly, like Yuddha Abhyas, Tiger Claw, Malabar. So these exercises improve interoperability, trust between armed forces. So defense cooperation is not affected much by political tensions. So if you see the role of defense and technology agreements, over the years, many agreements have been signed. And this is very important, majorly because UPSC asks questions from these things, okay? Like Lemova agreement in 2016, which is for logistics support. Then Comcasa in 2018 for secure communications. Next, Becca in 2020 for geospatial information. Next, IndusX in 2023 for defense innovation. Next, initiative on critical and emerging technologies in 2023, security of supply arrangement in 2024, and the defense framework agreement in 2025. Together, these agreements create permanent institutional linkages. So, cooperation continues even if political relations fluctuate. Now, if you look at the infrastructure cooperation through Quad, in November during India Maritime Week, the Quad Ports of the Future conference was held. And the focus was on resilient ports, secure infrastructure, shared investment and expertise. And it was organized by Ministry of Ports and External Affairs. And this shows Quad is not only about military security, but also about connectivity and development in the Indo-Pacific. So we can clearly see two tracks. On the political side, summit postponed, trade tensions, diplomatic discomfort. But on the institutional side, ministers meeting, defense agreements, military exercises, technology projects, and infrastructure cooperation. So this is why the article calls it a parallel track sustaining the relationship. On the whole, if you take, in 2025, India-US relations show a dual track model. Defense agreements, space cooperation, military exercises, and infrastructure initiative are acting as stabilizers. These institutional foundations are now the real backbone of the partnership. See, the next article for the day is Stepping in with Maoism in Rapid Retreat. See, earlier we saw about how security camps helped in preventing this left wing extremism spread. Now, in this article, they are talking about how the governance should be or the basic development should be. So, security success must now be followed by governance success. First one is the health infrastructure. Medical facilities must reach interior villages. Anemia is widespread among tribals. Cerebral malaria is common in some pockets there, and lack of safe drinking water cause dysentery outbreaks. Snake bites are also common in forest areas. So, primary health centers and mobile medical units must function actively in areas that are freed from Maoist influence. Second, livelihood and agriculture. Most tribals depend on farming and forest produce. Earlier, Maoists dug ponds, planted orchards, forced contractors to pay better prices for tendo leaves, helped in land leveling. All this was done to gain tribal support. Now the government must replace this vacuum. That means supplying good quality seeds, even fish seeds where ponds exist, building check dams for irrigation, setting up processing units for forest produce near villages. Minimum support price is announced every year. But if processing centers are far away, tribals cannot benefit. So the goal must be more economic activity, better living standards. Third, education and rehabilitation. More educational ashrams must be opened in Dandakaranya region. Earlier, this model worked well because villages are small and scattered. So normal schools are not practical. Also, the Maoists ran their own so-called revolutionary schools. That influence must be undone now. Many surrendered cadres are illiterate. They must be sent to government schools for basic education. Some cadres already have vocational skills, and these skills should be used productively. See, when we look at government schemes, Chhattisgarh government has started the Niyad Nelanar, which is Your Good Village scheme. It covers villages within 5 kilometers of security camps and provides benefits of about 25 government schemes. But now the Maoist influence is shrinking. This scheme must be expanded to all previously affected villages, not only those near the security camps. So the final message is very important. See, military success can weaken insurgency, but only development and justice can eliminate it permanently. Okay. If governance does not reach these areas, new forms of conflict may emerge even after Maoism collapses. So, the next phase of this fight is not with guns, but with schools, hospitals, water, roads, and livelihoods. So, that will be the real test for the state. The next article for the day: what does the Shanti Bill change? Shanti stands for Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy in India. This bill is important because it changes the basic structure of India's nuclear power sector, which has remained almost the same since 1956. Till now, nuclear power in India was fully under government control. Only one company, Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, was allowed to build and operate nuclear power plants. Private and foreign companies stayed away mainly because of strict liability laws, full state control, and regulatory restrictions. Now, the Shanti Bill changes this model. Now, what exactly the bill does? The bill opens the nuclear sector to private and foreign participation. Private Indian companies can now seek licenses, build nuclear plants, own nuclear plants, and operate nuclear plants. Foreign suppliers can also participate in supplying technology and equipment. However, the government will still keep 51% control over sensitive activities like nuclear fuel production, heavy water manufacturing, radioactive waste management, safety mechanisms, licensing, and strategic oversight. And private participation is allowed up to 49%. So, this becomes a public private partnership model with government control over critical areas. Also, the monopoly of this NPCIL ends here, and private companies and joint ventures can now enter plant operations, fuel fabrication, equipment manufacturing, and R&D. And this is also meant to support small modular reactors that we are coming up with, advanced reactor technologies, and India's clean energy transition. Then there is the creation of this Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. Now we will look into the role of this. Earlier, AERB existed under executive control. Now it has been given statutory status and is answerable to the parliament. So its role includes like nuclear safety, radiation protection, emergency preparedness, quality standards, issuing licenses, inspections, and enforcing safety laws. With private players entering, the AERB becomes the main safety regulator. However, critics say that too much power is being concentrated in one institution, and this is very important for public administration. Now, what safeguards does the bill provide? First, the bill does not directly allow FDI in nuclear power. All private companies must get authorization from this regulatory board. And permissions are required for production, possession, disposal of radioactive material, and operation of nuclear facilities. The government will still control spent fuel reprocessing, high level radioactive waste, and heavy water production, and also enrichment of radioactive substances. A nuclear liability fund will also be created for accident compensation. Now comes the most controversial part, that is the liability. Earlier, operators could recover damages from suppliers if accidents were caused by faulty equipment, defective design, and deliberate acts. Now, supplier liability is completely removed. Only the plant operator is responsible, and even that liability is capped. The new liability caps are rupees 3000 crore for large plants and 1500 crore for medium plants and rupees 100 crore for small modular reactors. And penalties for legal violations are capped at rupees 1 crore. If damages exceed this limit, the union government and the liability fund will pay. So beyond a point, the burden shifts to the state. The government says this makes liability predictable and investor friendly. Now, what is the government's argument for this bill? The center says India needs strong energy security. Renewables like solar and wind are dependent on weather, need storage, and have high grid cost. Coal still dominates power generation in India, but nuclear energy provides continuous baseload power, very low carbon emissions, and this will help India achieve energy security, clean energy goals, and net zero target for 2070. And this may also revive stalled civil nuclear deal with the United States, France, and Japan. And this also reduce dependence on Russia alone. And now, is India self-reliant in nuclear technology? According to various experts, the answer is yes. India runs around 25 reactors in 7 plants, mostly pressurized heavy water reactors. And India has mastered the reactor design, spent fuel reprocessing, and waste handling. So, the fast breeder reactor technology for thorium use has also been operationalized. So, India is largely technologically self-sufficient. Then why there is the strong opposition? See, the first opposition is the accountability is reduced. Now the private companies will make profits, but accident cost will be borne by the operator only up to a certain limit and then by the state. Okay, the supplier liability is also removed completely, and this is violating the polluter pays principle concept. Now the second one, the liability caps are too low. Accidents like Fukushima and Chernobyl caused damages far beyond these limits. In Fukushima, actual damages were around 700 times higher than the proposed caps. Next, the third issue is the transparency is reduced. Now, Section 39 of this bill overrides the RTI Act. Now, nuclear sector information will become restricted, and this will limit public scrutiny, accountability, and independent safety review. The fourth one is labor safety laws are overridden. Section 42 of this bill removes nuclear workers from general labor safety laws, and this has been opposed by trade unions, electricity workers, and farmers organization. The fifth is this bill is vendor driven. India already has thorium based technology. Private companies should be forced to use Indian designs, but the bill does not mandate that. The sixth one is no public consultation mechanisms. There are no provisions for mandatory public hearings, environmental impact disclosures, community consent, and regular safety reporting to Parliament. The example for this is France, where nuclear power remains fully government controlled. So, finally, what is the big picture or what you can get from this article is the Shanti Bill clearly marks a shift from state monopoly to regulated private participation. The government sees it as necessary for energy security, climate goals, and advanced technology. See the next article for the day. Police in states step up social media monitoring. See, over the last 5 years, police forces across India have created many dedicated social media monitoring cells. In January 2020, there were 262. By 2024, it is increased to 365. So, this is a major institutional expansion. Earlier, these monitoring units were not counted separately, they were part of cybercrime police stations. But from 2021 onwards, they started functioning as separate units. And this data comes from the Data on Police Organizations or DOPO reports. And this is prepared every year by the Bureau of Police Research and Development, and which is functioning under the Union Home Ministry. Now, apart from social media cells, cybercrime police stations have also increased. In 2020, there were 376. But by 2024, the number has been increased to 624. So both digital monitoring and cyber policing are expanding together. Now, why police are increasing this social media monitoring? This is mainly due to evolving crime trends. Crime today are increasingly linked to platforms like Facebook, X, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Snapchat. And these platforms are used for spreading rumors, mobilizing crowds, online fraud, hate content, and recruitment by extremist groups. So, monitoring is seen as a tool to prevent violence and cybercrime before it happens. And one more important thing is this report also gives social composition of police forces. Out of total sanctioned strength, 3.3 lakh belong to scheduled caste, 2.3 lakh belong to scheduled tribes, and 6.37 lakh belong to OBCs. But at the same time, there is a major human resource problem. Across India, there are 5.92 lakh vacant police posts out of a sanctioned strength of 27.55 lakh. So even as technology is increasing, manpower shortages remain serious. So for this year prelims, Somnath temple is very, very important. It's marking the 1000th anniversary of the first attack of this particular temple. So please look into this. See from this article, delay cannot be used as trump card to secure bail, Supreme Court verdict. See, the court said that delay in trial or long pre-trial detention cannot be used as an automatic ground for bail when the case is under special law like the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. See, the logic of the court is that constitutional rights like personal liberty and right to life under Article 21 are not absolute. They are subject to procedure established by law and restrictions imposed by special statutes passed by the parliament. And the UAPA is one such special law which is meant to deal with terrorism, threats to sovereignty, and national security. So, when Parliament has clearly laid down strict conditions for bail, courts cannot ignore those conditions only because the accused has been in jail for long. See the next article, Coast Guard adds pollution control vessel to its fleet. The Indian Coast Guard has commissioned a new ship called ICGS Samudra Pratap in Goa, and it was commissioned by our defense minister. And this is the first of two indigenously designed pollution control vessels. being inducted into the Coast Guard. And the ship has more than 60% of indigenous content. And this is also the largest ship in the Coast Guard fleet so far. Now, why it is very important is the Samudra Pradap will greatly improve the Coast Guard's ability in pollution response, firefighting, maritime safety, environmental protection, and extended maritime surveillance. So, this is not just an environmental ship, it is a multi role maritime platform. For the first time, two women officers will be posted on this ship. And this is a step towards a more inclusive and gender neutral Coast Guard. See, regarding this, India launches new e-business visa for Chinese nationals. You can quote this as an example in India-China relations, how it is getting improved. See, the next one, 31.8% of Aravalli Hills at risk after center's definition. See, a people-driven conservation group has said that 31.8 of the hills are now at ecological risk because of a new definition used by the central government. But according to the center's recent classification, only land above 100 meters height will be legally treated as hills for protection, and anything below 100 meters will not get legal protection as hills. Now, why is this a problem? The conservation group conducted an independent satellite based study using satellite data and a model called FABDEM. And the full form of this is Bristol Forest and Buildings Removed Copernicus Digital Elevation Model. Just remember it as FABDEM, it is more than enough. And their analysis showed that 31.8% of the total hill area falls below 100 meters. So these areas, even though they are ecologically important hills and ridges, will now lose legal protection. The group says that these are not wastelands. These low elevation areas are major groundwater recharge zones, natural dust barriers, and protect nearly 30 crore people from desert expansion. And they also warn that in these unprotected zones, the Thar Desert is already expanding. So, weakening protection here can worsen desertification, water scarcity, and air pollution. However, the center has claimed that only 0.19% of the Aravalli area is affected by this new definition. See, in this article, Saudi-backed Yemeni forces retake Hadramaut after days of yardsticks. Look into this Hadramaut province. This is very important. And this is a port city, okay? And also, this Greenland PM says no more fantasies about annexation. Look into Greenland. See, Greenland is actually part of Denmark. See this article. A scientist obtained first 3D images from inside major volcano, and this volcano is in Mexico. It is known as Popocatépetl. So this is this Hadramaut in Yemen, and this is this Gulf of Aden. So look into this bordering countries of Yemen also, and Yemen also has bordering with Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, and Arabian Sea. So this becomes important. See, the next is this volcano Popocatépetl. It is in Mexico. So look around this Mexico bordering countries also, the United States. Here you have this Guatemala, Belize, those countries, and this is Gulf of Mexico and Pacific Ocean. So look into this area also. So this is the Greenland's physical thing. See here, if you take around Greenland, if you take, there is this Baffin Bay. Okay, you have a Baffin Bay. Then there is Canada. Then you have this Lincoln Sea, Greenland Basin, and Greenland Sea. Okay, and there is also a Denmark Strait, Labrador Sea, and the tip is known as the Cape Farewell. There is this Davis Strait, and here you have a Denmark Strait. So look into the details. This becomes very important. So that's all for today. Thank you all for joining.